All right, brothers and sisters, Brother Lario coming at you from Baltimore, Maryland. I recently posted a poll in which I posed a question: do you think whites are the majority in the United States? And I gave several options. One being blacks are the majority, whites are the majority, Hispanics are the majority. That whites are slightly exaggerating their numbers, and the other one they're dramatically exaggerating their numbers. Well, there are several reasons I'm going to put forth to you in which I believe that whites are not the majority in this country and that they haven't been for quite some time, and I would say at least for the last 20 years, definitely. Okay? Um, in the 50s, you had from 1945 to 1955, you had a period known as the baby boom era. Okay, the baby boom era. All right, and it was the period in which the veterans came home from World War II and allegedly, right? Because I think all of this shit right here is just a crisis created bullshit propaganda campaign to exaggerate and pump up white numbers. And they try to justify it by putting a little story behind the shit, right? But here's how the story goes. Allegedly, after World War II ended in 1945, okay, officially, right? Really stopped, ended somewhere around 43, going into 1944, but officially it was over 1945. All right, that World War II veterans came home, and I guess they went on a goddamn fucking spree, right? And they created all these goddamn white babies, right? Then you had what was called the explosion of sort of like a Reconstruction period in America, although America was not attacked in the war outside of Pearl Harbor. You had this construction period explosion of suburban home building where you had these prefabricated houses thrown up, you know what I mean, and all over, not even necessarily rural areas, but you had a explosion of suburb building, and everybody was buying homes. You know what I'm saying? Even blacks here in Baltimore City was able to do that. Was able to get in on the home purchasing thing, not necessarily on the suburban end, but as whites began to buy these suburban homes, a lot of inner city real estate, was relinquished. They moved out. You know what I mean? The niggas was able to move in and buy a lot of these homes. And then here you had the steel working plants and things of that nature. Industry was still great. It was. In fact, it was better than great in the 1950s. Okay, I don't think nobody in America had a problem with employment. And in fact, I'd like to take a look at 1950s unemployment rate, because I bet it was somewhere below 10%. All right. Um, so according to them, they had this big population explosion called the baby boom era. All right. And that basically identifies with any children that were born between 1945 and 1950. Okay. All right. Why do I say that this may be an exaggeration or numbers a numbers pump up thing, right? Attempt to pump up numbers. And that's because uh you had something created called the United Nations. Okay, it began as the League of Nations, and that didn't work out. And then you had the United Nations. Now, whites throughout history have always exaggerated their population numbers and the size of their countries on maps and shit like that. They always made European countries big and made non-European countries smaller. Okay, for instance, they increased the size of Russia, they increased the size of Europe, they increased the size of United States, they increased the size of Canada and shit like that, but they decreased the size of Africa. They decreased the size of India, they decreased the size of China, they decreased the size of non-European places, right? And you got to understand that when you're in control of things like that, and when you're seated into a dominant position, like they are, then you can get away with shit like that. You know what I'm saying? That's like I had a discussion with some crackers on Hannibal's skin color. Okay, which is common knowledge. You know what I mean? But these motherfuckers, and now after these motherfuckers were insisting that Hannibal was white, and that they talking about, man, I have motherfuckers coming in from Rome, right? Talking about I live in Rome and we have statues all over Rome of Hannibal and he's white. You know what I mean? This and that. So then I goes on Google and shit, and absolutely, man, they have all these new images of Hannibal as white. I mean, they have whitened Hannibal like they whitened Jesus, man, and like they flooded the goddamn internet and flooded the goddamn the source information. You know what I'm saying? Like Wikipedia, encyclopedias, World Book, Britannica, and shit like that. They flooded they totally whitewashed Hannibal and made him fucking white. You know what I'm saying? Fuck the fact that he was fucking born and lived in North Africa, right? In fucking Carthage, and that it was a hop, skip, and a jump from goddamn Italy. Okay, that's why Hannibal was keeping an eye on them motherfuckers, because Rome at that time was on their little killing spree and land grab shit. You know what I mean? Roman expansion. You did? And Hannibal knew they was going to try to bring that shit his motherfucking way. You did? And when they did make a little slight attempt, you know how white people is. They play a little hokey pokey with your goddamn borderlines and shit. You know what I mean? They sit up there and put their toe right at the edge of your goddamn line or your goddamn border, right? And then when you jump up, right, they say, my feet ain't over the line. My feet ain't over the line. But why is you even playing this game? Why you even got your feet up on the edge of the goddamn line in the first place, see? And, Hannibal jumped right on that shit. You guys excuse me, my blood pressure medicine dries my mouth out. No, Hannibal just refused to play the little stupid ass game that they was trying to play. And Hannibal said, fuck that shit. You know what I mean? I'm gonna go deal with these motherfuckers. And that's what the fuck he did. You know what I mean? So Hannibal did what we say in the hood. He pulled their motherfucking card. You know what I mean? The motherfucker was selling wolf tickets. They was bluffing and shit. Just trying to see, will this motherfucker stand up? Will he buck? You know what I mean? If we test his nuts, will he buck? You know what I mean? And Hannibal went on and pulled their motherfucking card. And this is something that I urge us to do, even now to this day, man. That's why I say history is the best goddamn teacher, man. History is the best goddamn teacher. By taking a good look at history, you will see what things have been tried, tested, and proven to be effective, and what things have been tried, tested, and proven to be failures. You know what I'm saying? So within those two goddamn principles, you will find wisdom. You know what I mean? You will find wisdom, man. Shit. Because I guarantee, man, anything that you going up against or you see that might be coming down the pipe, man, it is already happened in history. And there are examples of it in history. And you will be able to find a solution to your goddamn dilemma in history. You know what I mean? If you search right. If you search in the right places, man, and know how to ask the right questions. You did? But yeah, man, these motherfuckers, man, have been intentionally exaggerating their numbers for quite some time. You know what I mean? And another one of the reasons, like I said, so when they came up with the United Nations shit, right? Then they had all these other motherfucking nations. I know that's not no one. That is a number one. And why? God damn it. They kill me with that shit. Buses never stick to the schedules here in Baltimore City, so bus schedules are just fucking irrelevant because the drivers just do what the fuck they want to do. But anyway, so when they formed the United Nations, all right, they really got a real good look at what was going on, and whites have always knew that on the world stage that they only made up like 10%. Even now, and this was back in the United Nations era of the 50s, they was only making up 10% of the world population. Now they only gotten now in fucking 50 years, they still only got 3% higher. They around 13% of the world population. You know what I mean? Yeah, so they still only like fucking excuse me for a second. Okay, so with the start of the UN, they was able to get not just a national idea of nation, but they was now having access to countries, some information that they didn't have privy to before the UN, was implemented. Okay? Was there where they really got a good look and a good understanding of just where the fuck they stood in comparison to non-white peoples in the world. All right, so this is why they began to pump up and create these things such as the baby boom era. You know what I mean? Because if you gonna sit, if listen, if you buy that story of motherfucking veterans, right, coming home from jail, coming home from war, and now all of a sudden they got the super sperm, okay? They ain't had it before they went, but they go to fucking war, and then they come back home from war, and now all of a sudden they got super sperm, right? Fuck out of here. Most motherfuckers that come home from war are traumatized, alright? They ain't doing a whole lot of fucking, alright? So this is a goddamn propaganda lie that they sold to people, alright? These motherfuckers are not the goddamn majority here in America, man. Based on my approximation, if I had to give an educated guess as to population numbers right now, I'd say this. Now before I go there, right, I have to say this, right? Up until 2012, right, if you were Hispanic, you didn't even have an option, all right? You didn't get an option of being Hispanic until 2012, okay? You were classified as white, all right? Only people that had categorization and classification was black, white, Native American, okay? And then that was basically it. On some of them, you may see some shit called other, right? Other, whatever the fuck that is, okay? But and then when you did check off other and you wrote Native American, your shit was automatically thrown into the white category, though. You know what I mean? And this was a way. This is sort of like how I described to you fractional reserve banking, right? Works, right? But this is fractional reserve banking in consensus, right? And dealing with consensus, okay, with population. Fractional reserve banking says based on my $1 deposit, right, into the bank, that the bank can jack up their goddamn what do you call that shit? They can jack up their they're trying to say their assets 1,000%. You see what I'm saying? So for every dollar you deposit into a bank, the bank can now say, based on that $1 deposit, I have $1,000 on my books. You see what I'm saying? They call that fractional reserve banking, right? And this is what white folks are using in the form of consensus. Fractional reserve, right? Population strategy. Understand? Fractional reserve consensus. See, I be coming up with concepts like a motherfucker. Yo, I swear to God. But see, that's because I exercise what I tell y'all a lot in my lectures, comparative analysis. I make comparisons on everything that I learn. Whenever I learn something new or read about something new, I immediately try to seek and try to gain understanding of the thing. As much understanding as can be gained. You know what I mean? Because I tell you, Solomon says, seek knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, and of the three, seek understanding the most. You know what I mean? So once I learn a new thing or read about something new, I immediately make comparative analysis. I do analytical comparisons as to how this particular thing may operate or work. You know what I mean? Based on my experience, my reality. And life as I know it, right? Right. All right. So here's my Here's my guesstimate, all right, on where I think the racist populations are. Okay, so I'm throwing the census numbers out the window. Okay, and matter of fact, I'll leave that part for last. Here's some more. I'm going to lay down my premise and my reasons why I'm going to give you the conclusion that that I've drawn. Okay. Another thing, whenever I've lived in Baltimore City, right? Damn near all my life. Okay. Outside of a year here or 2 years here, in which I lived in other states. Okay. But I'm 46 years old, and I can say that for 40 years I lived in Baltimore City, and for 36 years I lived in the same fucking house. Alright, my mama's house. Okay? Pretty much. Again, outside of a year or two here or there, you know what I mean, not living in there, right? But meaning like, I'm familiar with with my goddamn neighborhood, in other words, right? And I'm familiar, with shit, right? So, in Baltimore City, right? That census shit, okay? Man, let me tell you something. Them goddamn census workers, out of 36 years, I've seen census workers in my neighborhood probably once. I can think of one time I can say that I'm for sure I seen them and work in my area once. Okay? No more than twice. No more than twice, alright? And what I witnessed when I saw what I saw was uncoordinated. It was very laxed. Okay? And it's no way that what I observed that they got an accurate count of reality. I believe that the census is fucking 20% counting, 80% estimate. Okay? No, matter of fact, let me scratch that shit. It's 20% counting, okay? And then it's fucking 80% exaggeration. Alright? Propaganda. Shaping and forming shit, right? To advance white interests. That's what the fuck it is. It's 20% actual counting involved, right? And then the rest is making certain tweaks and adjustments here and there to make the shit reflect, right? Reflect what's best in our interest, which is always, and it's the first rule in the art of war, man, is to exaggerate your numbers towards your enemies or opposition or adversaries. All right, you always want to make your opposition believe that your numbers are much higher than they really are. You see what I'm saying? And who is white people's opposition, right? Unofficially, their unofficial opposition is us. And we didn't declare that shit. This is just how they see, think, and behave because they operate out of sense of fear. Out of sense of fear, out of sense of guilt, because they know they wrong the fuck out of us, and that we live in the same, well, we gotta live in the same house. You know what I mean? So it's like two motherfuckers that live in the same house, but two brothers live in the same house, but one brother enslaved the other. Alright? So how can the one that enslaved them sleep at night, knowing this motherfucker is sleeping in the room next door? You got what I'm saying? This is how the situation is. Okay? This is how the situation is. Alright, so let me get on. Oh, and then the third thing is conception. White people have had problems with conception since God knows when, okay? And for some reason, over the last 20 years especially, they have had to come up with some serious medical breakthroughs in the field of conception. All right, they've came up with in vitro fertilization. They've came up with artificial insemination. Right? they've came up with surrogate motherhood, right? Uh, taking taking the egg from the mother, right? Taking the egg from the mother and the sperm from the father, all right? Um, Making inception take place in a petri dish, and then taking that zygote fetus and then planting it back into a surrogate, which is an outside carrier, basically, who is not the actual mother of the egg. So you have a host. That you have a host. Surrogate is pretty much a host who is going to incubate this zygote, right? This fetus, all the way through birth, okay, through its entire conception, all right. All right. So that's pretty much the extreme that they've have had to go to in order to not be wiped out by other groups. You know what I mean? And they must keep this they must keep this facade alive. You know what I mean? Of the facade of them being the majority. Okay. You'll hear all kinds of terms. The right majority. You know what I mean? The left majority, the right majority. You know what I mean? All kinds of terms that say majority. And let me tell you something about another thing about white people. Whatever the government says that empowers them, these terms that the government put out there that empowers them, it's the gospel to white people. Okay, it's the gospel to them. All right. If all the world could know it's a lie, and in fact, I'm sure that even they know the shit be a lie, but for some reason, man, they don't give a fuck whether it's a lie or not. And if it is a lie, they'll never show it. That's how they feel. Okay, nigga, if it is a lie, I'll never show it. I'll never admit it. I'll never show it. And you know what I mean? And that's how they are, man. For real. So, but all right, now I'm going to give you my guesstimate on numbers. Okay, right now as it stands in the year 2016, I believe that blacks are the majority in this country. Okay, I base that on several things. Okay, I base that on the 30 major cities in this country. All right, having populations, and out of those 30 major cities, 7 of those cities have populations of 1 million and more black people. All right, black people. Okay, but I think neck and neck we're with Hispanics, because increasingly I'm starting to see as many goddamn Hispanics, and especially they starting to pop up in urban areas where they weren't, you know, as little as fucking 10 years ago. And now, you know, you're seeing them there as if they've been there the whole time. There are exceptions in which, you know, for the little few states in which there are low black numbers, we make up for in the dense urban populated states in which we're concentrated. You know what I mean? Chicago, Detroit, you know what I'm saying? Baltimore. You know, these places have fucking like, you know, above 50%, above 50% black populations. So you dealing with a lot of fucking niggas, man. You know? You dealing with a lot of niggas, man. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, so even though you have your North Dakota, South Dakotas, your Iowas, your Wyomings, you know what I'm saying? you know, those handful, you can pretty much probably count on one hand 5 or so states in which, you know, blacks are probably below 5% in population. But like I said again, they more than make up for it in dense urban populated areas, where the black population in comparison to white people are somewhere like, you know, like here in Baltimore, the black population compared to whites is like 7-1. You know what I mean? 7-1. If you was to, and there's no fucking way that, you know, I seen population numbers from New York. You know what I mean? From New York. And here's another example of what I'm saying, like with the Iowas and Wyomings and the Dakota states. Even though New York is a big state, and you know New York City is only, you know, a small part of New York State. You know what I'm saying? The deep concentration of blacks in the urban dense areas of New York and the Hispanics, you know what I'm saying, still knock out the box the rural parts of New York, Buffalo, you know what I mean, Rochester got a hell of a lot of goddamn Hispanics. You know, that's why I say, if I think, man, probably the Hispanics are probably, they edge the South. I think they might be around, I think the Hispanics might be around 45 million. I think I remember like 10 years ago, they was honest with the 42 million niggas. But they claiming we done dropped from 42 million, right, down to 32 million in 10 goddamn years. I don't buy that shit. I don't buy that shit. You know what I mean? I don't buy that shit. Even with their population reduction strategies in motion, I still don't buy the shit. You know what I mean? One thing black people ain't got no problem doing is busting no goddamn nuts or knocking no goddamn females up. You know what I mean? We definitely ain't got that problem. You know? I goddamn teenagers, you know, that's another thing I wanted to tell you. I goddamn teenagers is fucking like a motherfucker and making babies, and white teenagers aren't, man. They just not doing that shit like us. You know what I'm saying? You got goddamn 16-year-old daddies, you know, like it ain't no goddamn thing. And, you know, most whites ain't doing this shit. You got a whole lot of whites that ain't even have no kids till fucking 30 years old. You know? And it comes from them they plan their pregnancies and parenthood and shit like that. You know? You got like a lot of white people ain't making kids till they 40s and shit like that. You know what I mean? Where they more focused on goddamn career. They more career minded and shit like that. You know what I mean? Where we don't think about shit like that necessarily. You know what I'm saying? Not the majority of us. Alright? When I say things like that, I don't need nobody coming telling me, oh, of course we do. There's plenty of black people do that. When I tell you that shit like that, I'm not talking about the exceptions. Alright? So don't be so fucking asinine and redundant. You know, and nitpick. You know what I mean? Of course, there's exceptions to every goddamn thing. So I don't need to hear that shit. Alright, so, like I said, I think Hispanics might be somewhere around 45. I think it might be about, matter of fact, I say Hispanics about 45 to 48 million. I say we even if we ain't get no more, no higher in our population numbers from 10 years ago at 42 million. I know we ain't dropped no goddamn 10 million. So I say that we probably somewhere between 38 and 42 million. Alright? We may not have increased in 10 years. And if we did take a drop, it ain't going to be no more than 4 or 5 million. You know? So I say we're at 38 to 42 million. Hispanics should be somewhere around, I get them 45 to 48 million, right? Because them motherfuckers, man, them motherfuckers are heavy up in Connecticut. They heavy up in fucking like upstate New York. You know what I'm saying? They in places where we aren't. You know what I mean? And you gotta remember this shit. Them motherfuckers had something like 30. Them motherfuckers had something like fucking 35 million, along with they were saying. Some people saying 20 million illegals on top of the 35. They had like 35 million legals according to white numbers, and then they had some were saying 20 illegals and some were saying 11 million illegals. So you take a look at that shit. 35 million legal, right? Which was still below our numbers by 5 million, right? Well, when they were saying the 35 million Hispanics that were here legal, they was also trying to say that we had took that goddamn 10 million drop. So they were saying they was at 35 million, we was at 32 million, right? But even then, we was still neck and neck, right? And then goddamn wind up on the subway platform. It's cold. So they were saying, okay, we was at 32 million, they was at 35 million, but that these motherfuckers had another 20 million boost, from 11 million to 20 million boost in illegal immigrants here. Okay? Now, here's another reason why I tell you that white people are not the majority in this country. And that would be the recent 20 plus legislation reform bills that favored illegal Hispanics remaining in this country and not being, deported and shit. Not only was they allowed to stay here and not be deported, but these motherfuckers, they was, again, the numbers were saying anywhere from 11 million illegals to 20 million illegals. So, we're gonna split the shit. All right. So what's the middle between 11 million and 20 million? Somewhere around what? 5, 6 million, 5.5, 5.5 million. Right. So we're gonna cap another 5.5 on that 11. So we're gonna say somewhere around 16.5 million motherfuckers here illegally, right? And that these motherfuckers are now allowed to partake in goddamn student loans, grants, you know what I mean, employment, you know what I'm saying? Everything but goddamn health insurance as of now, you know? And now the motherfuckers are fighting because right now, as it stands, in Texas, if you illegally here and you have a baby, now the law says if you're born in the United States, you're a citizen. But Texas bucking. And you gotta remember, Texas is a goddamn Commonwealth state. You know what I mean? At any goddamn time, Texas can secede from the Union. Alright? Texas is part of the United States by treaty. Alright? By treaty. And they ratify and renew that goddamn treaty every few years or so. Right? But at any given time, Texas reserves the right to secede from the goddamn Union and be an independent country. How many of y'all know that shit? See, that's the other side of being a Commonwealth state. You dig? Commonwealths have to re-ally themselves like a contract. You know what I mean? Every few years. But it's always just like unspokenly done. You know what I mean? It's just been unspokenly done for so long. You know what I mean? Nobody even talks about the shit. It's sort of like when our government borrows money from the Federal Reserve. You know, they've been doing this shit so long until a crisis hit. You know, most recently, in the last 5 years, you know, they've been hitting this goddamn so-called debt ceiling, and the goddamn banks, you know, are pretty much playing a little game with their ass. Like, I don't know, man, y'all owe us a lot of bread. You know, we ain't gonna be able to loan y'all all that y'all want, but we will loan y'all this. You know what I mean? And that's how you gotta fuck with them, though. But that's how them goddamn Jewish gangsters fucking with the United States. But yeah, I say that. So I'm gonna say that they somewhere around 35 million with a goddamn 16.5 million cap on that. So that's 45. You can say about 50 million, man. While we still at 42 million. So they got them Hispanics guys about 8 million. If you add together the legals and the illegals. You know what I'm saying? Ha. There it is. And I know goddamn well them crackers ain't that high. They ain't up there. They ain't in no 50 million bracket. You know what I mean? They ain't in there. So this is why I said they introduced these immigration reform bills and shit and pushing them so hard. It was 20 plus, 20 or more of the motherfucking immigration reform bills. And that's because they're trying to make whiteness and goddamn Hispanic one. They want to be one people, okay? Because you're the threat. Don't forget that shit. You're the threat. You're the threat. And now they're going to groom Hispanics on white ideology. And they're going to groom the Hispanics on white ideology and sell them on the idea that these niggas need to be in their place. You dig? And they will allow Hispanics to put you in there, to put you in your place as if they were white. That's why they let that goddamn Zimmerman get away with the Trayvon Martin shit. See, that's allowing the Hispanic to put you niggas in your place as if they were white. So now white people are granting Hispanics, right, deputy powers. They've deputized the goddamn Hispanics, right? So this is what the fuck we're up against, man. That motherfucking Hispanics aren't your brother. They are not your ally, okay? They will fucking sell you out or kick you in your ass just like a cracker. Don't you forget it, alright? So fuck them motherfuckers too. Fuck them too. And look, and take notice. They ain't doing to the Hispanics the shit they doing to you. They ain't shooting their goddamn kids in the street in cold blood, goddamn it. They doing that to your ass. Okay? You did? That's a goddamn message there. Alright? So that's what the goddamn, that's the story right there. And that's Elahi Els. You heard it from me. Peace.